The winter sky over Lowe's Angels looked soft and heavy that morning, almost like it was carrying a secret of its own. The air was cool enough to make people pull their jackets close, but it wasn't the kind of cold that hurt. Instead, it had a strange quiet to it, a calmness that felt unusual for a city always rushing towards something. Sandra Bullock woke up with that feeling in her chest too, a kind of deep stillness mixed with a feeling she couldn't completely explain. She moved through her house slowly, noticing the faint smell of cinnamon candles she had lit the night before, the soft echo of her steps on the hardwood floor, and the holiday decorations she had put up earlier in the week. It was almost Christmas, but something about this Christmas felt different. She could sense it even before she opened the curtains and let in the pale morning light. There was a weight in the air, a memory gently trying to surface, but she didn't know why. As she made her way to the kitchen, her mind wandered to the years she'd spent building a quiet life, a life filled with laughter, love, her children, and a small circle of people she trusted. Yet no matter how far life moved forward, there were names, moments, and connections that never faded. One of those was Keanu Reeves. For years, their friendship had been a steady presence in her life, not loud or demanding, but honest, simple, and full of the kind of respect that felt rare in Hollywood. They didn't talk every day, sometimes not even every month, yet when they did speak, it always felt like no time had passed. But lately, she had sensed something different in him. Something he didn't say out loud but carried quietly, like a shadow he couldn't shake. As she poured herself a cup of coffee, she remembered the last time they saw each other. It was months ago, at a small industry event where both of them tried to stay unnoticed. She remembered how he smiled, that soft smile of his, the kind that didn't need to be big to be warm. She remembered how he asked her if she was doing okay, really okay, not in the polite way people in their world usually spoke. She remembered the long pause he took before telling her he was working on something personal. He didn't explain what it was, but she felt the heaviness behind his words. Now, on this quiet morning, something inside her whispered that whatever he had been carrying was coming closer. Sandra was preparing breakfast when her phone buzzed gently on the counter. She wiped her hands and reached for it. There was a text from a number she didn't expect so early. It was Keanu. He had written a short message, just a few simple words, but they stopped her breath for a moment. "Can I come by today?" There was no explanation, no joke, no smiley face, no hint of what he wanted, just that question. Her eyes stayed on the screen as she tried to make sense of it. Keanu was not someone who asked for anything unless it truly mattered. He respected space, boundaries, and silence more than most people she knew. If he was reaching out like this, it meant something was happening inside him. Something real, something heavy, something he could no longer carry alone. She typed back slowly, trying not to overthink. "Yes, of course, whenever you want." The rest of her morning felt unusually long. She cleaned the kitchen even though it was already clean. She rearranged ornaments on the Christmas tree even though she liked how they looked before. She walked from one room to another without really knowing why. She kept telling herself that everything was fine, that Keanu probably just wanted to talk, maybe catch up, maybe bring a gift for the kids or something simple like that. But deep down, a quiet fear kept growing. She felt her heartbeat quicken every time she looked at the clock. She didn't know why she was nervous, but she was. Around noon, a soft knock came at her door. Her chest tightened. She walked toward the entrance with careful, slow steps, almost as if she was afraid of what she might see on the other side. When she opened the door, her breath caught quietly in her throat. Keanu was standing there, wearing a dark jacket and holding a small gift wrapped in simple brown paper. He looked calm, almost peaceful, but his eyes told a different story. There was a softness in them, but also something deeper, pain maybe, regret. Or something even more complicated that he had carried for years. He gave her a small smile, the kind that felt familiar and distant at the same time. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi," Sandra replied, her voice warm but careful. "Come in." He stepped inside, and she noticed the way he held the gift. It wasn't casual. It wasn't like someone carrying a present just for fun. He held it with both hands, close to his chest, almost protectively, like it mattered more than anything else he had brought to her home before. They walked to the living room, and she gestured for him to sit. He did, placing the gift gently on his lap. She sat across from him, trying to read his expression. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, but it was heavy, like the room was waiting for something important to happen. Sandra could feel a warmth in her chest she couldn't explain. She watched him breathe slowly, eyes drifting around the room until they settled back on her. He looked like he rehearsed this moment in his mind for a very long time. Finally, he spoke. I've been meaning to come here for a while, he said softly, but I wasn't sure if I should. She nodded gently. You can always come here, you know that. He swallowed, the movement small but full of tension. I know, but this is different. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes soft, her voice gentle. Keanu, what's going on? He looked down at the gift in his lap, running his fingers over the edge of the paper like he was trying to find courage in the texture. She watched him closely, feeling the tension in the air thicken. I've had this for years, he whispered, and I never knew if I should give it to you. Her breath stilled. She waited, not wanting to interrupt, not wanting to pressure him. I kept it hidden, he continued quietly. Not because I didn't want you to have it, but because I didn't want to change anything between us. I didn't want to risk it. She felt her heart twist with worry and curiosity. Change what? He lifted his eyes slowly, and the look in them made her chest tighten. It was raw, unguarded, almost vulnerable in a way she wasn't used to seeing from him. The truth, he said softly. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. What truth? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he placed the gift gently on the table between them. It looked small, old, and worn, like the edges of the paper had aged with time. Sandra's fingers trembled slightly as she looked at it. Keanu took a slow breath. Before you open it, I need to tell you something I should have said years ago. She felt her heartbeat quicken, her palms warm, her throat tight. Something inside her told her this moment mattered more than she understood. He continued, his voice slow and heavy. Christmas always made me think of you, not because of the holidays or the movies or the events, but because of something that happened a long time ago, something that stayed with me even when I tried to forget it. She stared at him, her eyes reflecting a mix of fear and tenderness. Keanu, you're scaring me. He shook his head softly. I don't want to scare you, I don't want to hide this anymore, I don't want to keep it inside. Silence filled the room again, deeper than before. Sandra felt her throat tighten, and she blinked slowly, trying to steady her breathing. She didn't know what was inside the gift, but she could feel the weight of it without touching it. I kept this, he whispered, looking at the box, because it was the last moment I didn't tell you how I really felt. And I thought if I ever gave it to you, it would mean I was finally ready to tell the truth. Her voice trembled softly as she asked, Keanu, what truth? He lifted his head, his eyes meeting hers with a softness that made her heart ache. That I've cared for you in a way I never said out loud, in a way that scared me more than anything else. Her breath hitched, a warmth spread through her chest and down her arms. She didn't speak, she couldn't. He leaned back slightly, looking exhausted from holding this inside for so long. I didn't want to tell you while life was heavy for you. I didn't want to complicate anything. I didn't want to make things harder, so I stayed quiet. I stayed in the background. I kept the gift. And I told myself that maybe one day, if the time felt right, I would give it to you. A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. She quickly wiped it away, but he saw. His expression softened even more. Sandra, I'm sorry, he said gently. I didn't come here to upset you. She shook her head slowly, her voice thick. You didn't upset me, I wasn't expecting this. He nodded, understanding. I know. Her eyes dropped to the gift again. She felt a strange mix of fear, hope, sadness, and something she couldn't name building inside her. What's in it? She whispered. Keanu took a slow breath. Something I should have given you a long time ago. She reached out with slow, shaking hands and touched the box. The paper felt slightly rough, like it had been held many times over the years. She looked at him once more, and he nodded gently, giving her permission. She began to unwrap it. Neither of them spoke as the paper fell away. Sandra took the lid off the small box, her fingers trembling slightly. When she opened it, she stopped breathing for a moment, her eyes widening, her lips parting in shock. Inside was something simple, yet powerful enough to shatter her calm in an instant. A small folded note, and a delicate silver bracelet she remembered from years ago, because she once lost it on a set long before either of them talked about the things that truly mattered. She stared at it, feeling her chest tighten painfully. She looked up at him slowly, tears beginning to blur her vision. Keanu, how did you? He cut her off gently, his voice quiet and full of emotion. I found it the day you lost it. You were so stressed, so overwhelmed, and I didn't want to make you feel worse. I thought I would give it back the next day, but then the moment passed. The timing never felt right. And then I realized it wasn't just about returning something you lost. It became something else, something I held on to because it reminded me of you. Her tears fell freely now, soft and soundless. He continued, voice breaking slightly. I kept it all these years because I wasn't ready to lose what it meant to me, but I think it's time you had it back. She covered her mouth with her hand, overwhelmed, unable to form words. The bracelet glimmered softly under the Christmas lights, and the note sat beside it, unopened, holding a truth she wasn't sure she was ready to face. She looked at him again, shaking her head slowly as tears streamed down her cheeks. "Keanu, why now?" she whispered. He took a deep breath, his voice barely holding steady. "Because this Christmas, I didn't want to spend another year wondering what could have happened if I told you the truth." The room felt frozen, silent, fragile. Her heart pounded, her breathing unsteady, her fingers trembling as she reached for the note. She unfolded it slowly. Her eyes moved across the words. Her breath stopped. And then, a soft, painful sound escaped her, somewhere between a gasp and a quiet cry. She clutched the note to her chest, and the room felt like it was about to break open. The note trembled in Sandra's hands as if it carried a heartbeat of its own, something alive, something that had waited far too long to finally speak. She pressed it gently against her chest, her eyes closed for a moment as she tried to steady the storm rising within her. The room felt smaller now, the quiet around them almost too heavy to breathe through. Keanu watched her carefully, not moving, not rushing her, giving her the space he always gave, but this time with a different kind of urgency hiding in his eyes. He looked like a man standing on the edge of something he could not undo once it was spoken. Sandra slowly lowered the note from her chest and looked down at it again. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded the small piece of paper. She noticed the edges were slightly worn, as if it had been opened, folded, tucked away, and handled again many times over the years. This wasn't something he wrote last night. It wasn't something he prepared just because he decided to visit. This note had lived with him for a long time, hidden somewhere he kept things he couldn't bring himself to let go of. That thought alone made her heart ache in a way she wasn't prepared for. She opened the note completely and forced herself to focus on the words written in Keanu's careful, almost shy handwriting. "You deserve everything gentle in this world. I hope one day I can tell you why you mean so much to me. Maybe next Christmas." That was all it said, but the simplicity made it hit even harder. She looked at the date he had written at the bottom. Her breath caught sharply. It was dated more than 10 years ago. Her fingers curled slightly, the paper crinkling between them. She stared at the words, but her mind raced beyond them, pulling memories into the present. Moments she had forgotten, or maybe moments she never realized held meaning for him. She remembered that Christmas. She remembered how tired she was, how overwhelmed she felt filming back-to-back projects, how she tried to pretend everything was fine. She remembered him being around more during that time, offering help, offering quiet company, offering gentleness without ever calling attention to it. She remembered laughing with him about stupid things, sharing food on set, walking together after long days because both of them were too drained to face the noise of the world. She remembered feeling safe with him without understanding why. She never knew he had written something like this. She never knew he had carried it with him. Her voice was soft and uneven when she finally spoke. "Keanu, you wrote this so long ago." He nodded slowly, his eyes holding hers with a softness that felt almost painful. "Yeah, I did." She swallowed hard, her heart pounding in her chest as she tried to understand everything that was happening. "Why didn't you give it to me?" He breathed out gently, leaning back as if the weight of the moment pressed against him. "Because every time I thought the moment was right, life changed. You were going through something, or I was, or we were both trying to protect the parts of our lives that felt fragile. I didn't want to bring confusion into your world." She shook her head slowly, her voice breaking slightly. "This wouldn't have confused me, Keanu. It would have meant something." His eyes softened even more, the warmth in them nearly undoing her. "I know that now. I think I've known it for a long time, but back then, I was scared of what it would mean, scared of hurting you, scared of making your life harder, and I didn't want to lose the friendship we had." Her eyes filled again, tears falling slowly but silently down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away this time. She was too overwhelmed, too caught between past and present, between the weight of what she never knew and the tenderness of what he had carried inside him. She looked at the bracelet inside the box again, glimmering softly under the Christmas lights. The memory of losing it rushed back to her with surprising clarity. She had been having one of the hardest days on set. She remembered feeling exhausted, pressured, and insecure about everything. She had taken the bracelet off to wash her hands quickly before a scene, and when she came back, it was gone. She remembered feeling strangely devastated by it, like losing it meant something bigger, something symbolic about how she was losing pieces of herself during that time. She remembered telling Keanu about it, trying to laugh it off, pretending it didn't matter when deep down it did. She never knew he found it. She never knew he kept it. "Keanu," she whispered, her voice trembling, "why did you keep it for so long?" He looked down for a moment, his voice barely above a whisper. "Because it reminded me of you, not the actress everyone saw, but the person you were when the cameras were off. The one who stayed late to help people on set. The one who checked on everyone else even when you were falling apart inside. The one who tried to hide how much pressure you were under because you didn't want to burden anyone. I saw all of that. And that bracelet, it felt like a piece of you that was honest. Something fragile. Something real. And I guess I wasn't ready to give that back." Her tears fell faster now, and she pressed a hand over her mouth as she tried to contain the emotion rising inside her. She couldn't speak yet, so she didn't try. Instead, she leaned back slightly and let everything he said settle into her chest, heavy and warm and confusing in all the ways deep truths often were. The silence stretched between them again, but this time it felt more intimate, more vulnerable. She could hear his soft breaths and the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. She could feel her heart beating unevenly. She could sense him waiting, worried, unsure of how she would respond or what she would say next. Finally, she placed the note gently on her lap and wiped her cheeks with slow movements. She didn't look at him right away. Instead, she stared at the Christmas tree, the lights reflecting softly in her tear-filled eyes. She breathed quietly, trying to find the words that made sense. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but filled with something deep and trembling. "You have no idea what you've just done." He frowned slightly, worried. "If I've made a mistake." She cut him off gently, shaking her head quickly. "No, not a mistake, just something big, something I wasn't ready for, something I didn't know I needed until right now." Keanu leaned forward slightly, his hands clasped together, his elbows resting on his knees. His eyes searched her face carefully. "Sandra, what are you feeling?" She laughed softly, the sound fragile and raw. "I don't know yet, everything, too much, all at once. I feel sad that you carried this alone. I feel shocked that you thought you had to. I feel overwhelmed that you kept something so small but so meaningful. And I feel," she paused, swallowing hard, "I feel like I missed something important for so many years." He looked down, nodding quietly. "Maybe we both did." Her heart twisted at the gentleness in his words. She looked at him again, studying him in a way she had never allowed herself to before. His face held a soft vulnerability she rarely saw, something unguarded, something honest. He looked tired, not physically, but emotionally, as if carrying this truth had drained him for years. She whispered, "Why today, Keanu? Why now?" He exhaled slowly, his gaze drifting to the window where the soft winter light spilled into the room. "Because I didn't want to wait for the next Christmas, or the next one, or the next. I've spent too many years telling myself maybe next time. And something inside me kept saying, if I don't tell you now, I never will." She listened, her fingers tracing the folded lines of the note again. Something inside her began to shift, a slow, steady unraveling of memories she had buried without realizing it. She began remembering the way he looked at her sometimes, like he saw things she hid from the rest of the world. She remembered the way he stood a little closer when she was nervous, the way he waited for her when she walked away from an overwhelming moment, the way he listened without ever judging or demanding anything from her. She remembered how safe she felt around him, how easy it was to laugh with him, how quiet and warm the space between them had always been. She had never let herself look deeper into any of those moments. Not because she didn't feel something, but because life was complicated and she didn't want to lose what they already had. There were always reasons to stay in the safe place of friendship. But now she wasn't sure that was the whole truth. She lifted the bracelet from the box and held it in her palm. It felt lighter than she remembered, but somehow it carried more weight than anything else in the room. The metal felt cool against her skin, but her hand was warm, trembling slightly. She stared at it for a long moment before speaking again. "You kept this," she whispered, "for over a decade." "Yeah," he said softly, "I did." "And you kept the note, too." His eyes lowered. I kept everything. Her chest tightened. She placed the bracelet back into the box slowly and then looked at him with a softness he wasn't expecting. Keanu, I didn't know I mattered to you like this. He lifted his eyes and his voice came out quiet, careful, honest. You mattered to me more than you ever knew. She felt something inside her break open, something she had kept sealed without realizing it. All the memories, all the unspoken things, all the quiet moments they shared, they suddenly felt different now. Deeper, clearer, more connected. She leaned forward slightly, her voice trembling. If you had given this to me back then, I don't know what would have happened, but I know it would have changed something, maybe everything. He nodded, accepting that truth with a mixture of sadness and peace. I know, that's why I was scared. She breathed slowly, her eyes glistening. And now? He looked directly at her, his voice soft but steady. Now I'm not scared anymore. The words hit her like a gentle wave, warm and overwhelming. She felt her breath catch as she held his gaze. Something shifted in the room, something quiet, something deep, something that felt like the first step into a truth neither of them had been brave enough to walk toward before. But before either of them could speak again, her phone vibrated loudly on the table beside them, its sudden sound breaking the fragile moment. Sandra flinched slightly, her heart jumping. She glanced at the screen and her expression changed instantly, her eyes widening, her breath catching. Keanu noticed immediately. What is it? She stared at the screen, her voice barely above a whisper. It's from someone I didn't expect to hear from today. His eyes filled with concern. Is everything okay? Sandra swallowed, her fingers trembling slightly as she reached for the phone. I don't know. The message preview glowed on the screen. And whatever she read made the color drain from her face. She looked at Keanu slowly, her voice shaking. Keanu, I think this changes everything. The phone vibrated again in Sandra's hand, the screen glowing softly in the quiet room, but the silence between her and Keanu felt louder than anything else around them. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she stared at the message preview, reading the same few words again and again as if they would change if she looked long enough. But they didn't. They stayed the same, sharp, unexpected, filled with a weight she didn't think she would have to face today of all days. Keanu leaned in slightly, his brow tightening with gentle worry. He didn't move closer than necessary, didn't reach for her or the phone, but she could feel his presence like a warm, steady anchor beside her. She knew she had to say something, but her breath felt tangled and heavy in her chest. Finally, she swallowed and forced her fingers to unlock the phone. Her voice was almost a whisper when she spoke. It's from someone I haven't talked to in a long time. Keanu nodded slowly, waiting, patient, giving her the space she needed. She breathed out shakily. It's my sister. Keanu blinked, surprised but calm. Your sister, I thought. Yeah, she said softly, cutting him off gently. We don't talk much anymore. Life got complicated, things were said, things happened, we drifted. She paused, her voice trembling, but she never texts, ever. Keanu's eyes softened even further, a quiet understanding settling over him. What does she say? Sandra hesitated for a long moment before reading the message out loud, her voice cracking around the edges. I know this is sudden, but I need to talk to you. It's important, please call me. Keanu watched her carefully, trying to understand the shift happening inside her. She stared at the screen as if the letters might rearrange themselves into something easier to face. But they didn't. They stayed there, reminding her of wounds she had spent years trying to forget. Finally, she placed the phone gently on the table and leaned back, wiping her face with trembling hands. She didn't want to break the moment she and Keanu had built, this delicate, emotional space where truths were finally being spoken. But life never cared about timing. Not for her, not for him, not for anyone. Keanu took a soft breath. Do you want to call her? Sandra shook her head quickly. No, not yet. I can't do it right now. She swallowed hard, her throat tight. I need a minute, or more than a minute. He nodded, accepting her answer without any pressure. We can take all the time you need. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with gratitude and something deeper. Thank you. For a while, neither of them spoke. Sandra stared at the bracelet again, the delicate silver resting inside the box like a piece of her past waiting to be understood. The note sat beside it, the words still echoing inside her chest. The swirl of emotions from earlier, shock, tenderness, confusion, warmth, all mixed with this new, sudden ache from seeing her sister's name light up her phone after years of silence. Finally, she exhaled slowly, her voice quiet. I didn't expect today to turn into this. Keanu smiled gently, a sad kind of smile. Me neither. She looked at him again, realizing how much she wanted to return to the moment they were in before the phone interrupted them. She wanted to stay in the softness, the honesty, the vulnerability they had finally stepped into. She wanted to understand what his confession meant for both of them. But now there was something else pulling at her. An old pain, an old fear, an old story she never told him, or anyone really, not in full detail. She took a deep breath, her hands on her knees, grounding herself. Keanu, can I tell you something? Something I've never really said out loud. He shifted slightly, giving her his full attention. Of course. Sandra closed her eyes for a moment, gathering the courage she needed. When she opened them, her voice came out softer, deeper. The reason I haven't talked to my sister is because of something that happened one Christmas, many years ago. Keanu leaned back slightly, sensing the weight of what she was about to say. He continued, her voice slow and trembling. It was after my mom passed away. Everything was fragile. Everything felt like it was breaking. My sister and I tried to hold each other together, but instead we hurt each other. We were grieving in different ways. I kept everything inside, pretending I was fine. She was angry at the world, at me, at herself. We fought. We said things we shouldn't have said, and then she left. She blinked hard, her voice tight. She didn't call. I didn't call. Years passed. Every Christmas since then has felt heavy, no matter how much joy I tried to fill it with. Keanu's face softened with deep compassion. I'm sorry, Sandra. That sounds incredibly hard. She nodded slowly. It was, but I never expected to hear from her again. And now, after all this time, I don't know what she wants. I don't know if she's okay. I don't know if something happened. She took a trembling breath. And I don't know if I'm ready. Keanu reached forward slightly, not touching her but creating a gentle presence between them. You don't have to be ready right this second. You can take your time, breathe, sort through your feelings. No one expects you to handle everything perfectly. She looked at him with a deep, aching tenderness. You always know how to say the right thing. He chuckled softly, a warm, quiet sound. I try, I don't always succeed. She smiled through her lingering tears, the room softening around them again. For a moment, the phone and the message faded into the background. She focused on him, his calm presence, his steady voice, his emotional honesty, the way he sat there as if he would stay forever if she needed him to. Sandra let out a slow breath. I'm sorry, I just ruined everything. Keanu shook his head gently. You didn't ruin anything. Life happens. You opened a box you've been afraid to look inside for years. That takes strength. And the moment we were sharing, it's still here. It didn't disappear. She looked at him for a long moment, her heart warming again. So, what were you going to say before my phone exploded? He let out a quiet laugh. I think I already said too much. She shook her head lightly, a faint smile forming. Not too much, just enough. Their eyes held for a moment longer, something soft and unspoken passing between them. She felt a warmth in her chest, a quiet pull that grew stronger the longer she looked at him. Finally, she took the bracelet from the box again and held it out to him. Can you help me put it on? Keanu blinked, surprised. You want to wear it now? Sandra nodded softly. It's time. The simplicity of her words hit him deeply. He reached out carefully, his fingers brushing lightly against her wrist as he clasped the bracelet. The small touch sent a quiet shiver through her, warm, gentle, unexpected. He looked at her with a soft smile. There, it suits you. She looked at the bracelet resting on her skin, feeling something shift inside her. Thank you for keeping it safe. Keanu swallowed, his voice tender. Always. The room settled into another quiet, but this time the silence felt warm, full, and strangely hopeful. She could tell Keanu wanted to say more, something deeper, something attached to the confession he had carried for over a decade. She felt it hovering between them, waiting. She wanted to hear it. She wanted to respond. But before she could speak, her phone vibrated again. This time it wasn't just one message. It buzzed over and over. 5 messages. 6. 7. All from her sister. Sandra's heart thudded painfully as she reached for the phone with trembling hands. Her eyes moved across the new notifications quickly, and every expression on her face changed. Worried, confused, emotional, frightened, overwhelmed. Keanu leaned toward her again. Sandra, what is it? Talk to me. Her lips parted, but no words came out at first. She breathed in slowly, exhaled shakily, trying to steady herself enough to speak. Finally, she whispered, "She says she found something about Mom." Keanu's brows drew together. "Something about your mom." Sandra nodded slowly, tears forming again in her eyes. "She says it's something she was afraid to tell me, something she kept hidden for years, something she's ashamed of." Keanu's voice grew gentle. "Do you know what it is?" Sandra shook her head. "No, she didn't say, she just keeps begging me to call." Keanu watched her carefully, trying to understand the depth of what she was feeling. She sat frozen, staring at the phone as if the answers to her entire past were suddenly within reach, yet terrifyingly out of control. "Sandra," he said softly, "whatever it is, you're not alone, I'm here." She looked at him slowly, her voice breaking. "I know, but what if it's something that changes my memories, something that changes how I see her? I've already lost her once. I don't know if I can lose her again." He placed a hand on the edge of the table, steadying himself, steadying her with his presence. "Whatever it is, you're strong enough to face it, and you don't have to do it right away." She closed her eyes tightly, fighting the tears building in them. She wanted to be strong. She wanted to be brave, but the fear was heavy. "I'm scared, Keanu," she whispered. He leaned forward ever so slightly, his voice low and full of sincerity. "I know, but you're not facing this without someone who cares about you." She nodded slowly, her breathing uneven. She placed the phone back on the table, unable to look at it anymore. After a long silence, she whispered, "I need a moment, just a moment to breathe." Keanu nodded. "Take all the time you need, I'm not going anywhere." She looked at him again, and something inside her softened. She didn't know what would happen when she called her sister. She didn't know what truth was waiting on the other side of that phone call. But she knew she needed Keanu there more than ever. She whispered, "Can you stay? At least until I can make that call." He nodded instantly, his voice warm and certain. "I'll stay as long as you need." Tears fell again, soft, slow, grateful. But then, another notification appeared on her phone's screen. This one was not from her sister. She frowned, picking it up. She read it. Her breath vanished. Her fingers trembled violently as she held the phone out for Keanu to see. He took it gently. "Read the message." And his expression changed instantly. The message came from an unknown number. And it said, "You don't know the whole story, and you're not safe until you do." Sandra's voice cracked as she whispered, "Keanu, what is happening?" The room changed the moment Keanu finished reading the message. Something in the air grew colder, heavier, as if the quiet warmth that had filled the space only minutes before had been pulled away without warning. Sandra felt her heart pound painfully against her ribs while her fingers curled into the edge of the couch, trying to steady herself against the sudden rush of fear. She stared at the phone in Keanu's hand, the words still glowing on the screen like a warning she didn't understand but knew she couldn't ignore. "You don't know the whole story, and you're not safe until you do." She whispered the words again in her mind, each syllable twisting deeper into her chest. She felt a shiver climb up her spine, not because of the cold, but because those words felt like someone had stepped inside her life without permission, without boundaries, without mercy. Keanu kept his eyes on the message for several seconds longer before he finally looked at her. His expression had shifted, still calm, still gentle, but now grounded with a quiet alertness she hadn't seen in him before. It was the look of someone who instantly understood the seriousness of the moment and was already preparing to protect her, no matter what it meant. Sandra swallowed, her voice barely a whisper. "Keanu, who would send something like that?" He shook his head slowly. "I don't know, but it doesn't sound like a joke, not with everything else happening right now." Her breathing grew uneven as the weight of his words settled in. The message alone was frightening, but coming right after the sudden flood of texts from her sister, it felt coordinated, intentional, strange. Too strange. She leaned forward, burying her face briefly in her hands, her shoulders trembling. "This is too much, all of it. It's like everything from my past is crashing into today." Keanu gently placed the phone on the table, then moved slightly closer, still giving her space, but close enough that she could feel his steady presence. "Take a breath," he said softly. "We'll figure this out together." She lifted her head slowly, her eyes glistening with fear and confusion. Why would someone say I'm not safe? What could they possibly mean? Keanu shook his head again. I don't know yet, but we'll find out. Sandra rubbed her arms as if trying to warm herself, though she wasn't cold. Do you think this is connected to my sister, or my mom, or something else? Keanu took a moment before answering, choosing his words carefully. Messages like that usually aren't random, and they don't come out of nowhere. So yes, I think it's connected to something. Her stomach tightened painfully. She turned her gaze toward the Christmas tree lights flickering softly across the room, their gentle glow now feeling strangely out of place. This day was supposed to be calm, quiet, emotional in a personal way. She never expected it to take a turn toward something that felt dark, uncertain, almost threatening. She whispered, I don't like this, Keanu. I know, he said gently, but you're not alone. She nodded, wiping her face with slow movements, grounding herself. Then she reached for her phone again, her fingers trembling. She opened the messages from her sister, reading them more carefully this time. Please call me. It's about Mom. I found something you need to know. It's not what you think. You're going to be upset, but please don't be. I didn't mean to hide it for this long. I'm sorry. Sandra, please call me. The last message was the weakest one, almost desperate. Her sister hadn't used words like that in years. Sandra felt her throat tighten again, her heart sinking deeper into confusion. Keanu watched her closely. Does any of this make sense to you? She shook her head slowly. No, not yet. Then she paused. But whatever she found, whatever she's afraid to tell me, I think it's connected to that message. I think so too, he said quietly. She set the phone down again, staring at it like it was a doorway into something she had avoided for too long. She wanted to run from it and reach for it at the same time. She wanted answers, but feared what they might cost. Keanu leaned slightly closer, his voice soft but steady. Sandra, when was the last time you and your sister talked about your mom? She closed her eyes, exhaling shakily. Years. After she left, we avoided talking about any of it. We didn't know how to face it together or separately. The hurt was too deep. Keanu nodded slowly, understanding more than most people probably could. Grief does that. She looked at him with tired eyes. I thought I had accepted everything I knew about my mom. I thought I understood the past, but now I don't know anymore. He held her gaze. Whatever your sister wants to tell you, you're strong enough to face it. She sighed, covering part of her face. I don't want to be strong, not today. Keanu smiled softly, a warm, quiet expression. Then let me be strong for you. The words slipped into her chest like a balm, easing some of the fear that had settled there. She let herself breathe slowly, deeply, anchoring herself to the gentle calm in his voice. After a moment, she whispered, what if this changes everything I thought I knew about her? Then, he said softly, we'll face that change together. Emotion swelled in her chest. She blinked hard, swallowing the knot in her throat. She wasn't ready to call her sister, not yet. She wasn't ready to open doors that had been shut for years. But she knew she couldn't ignore the messages, not after everything that had happened today. Sandra leaned back, letting her head rest against the couch cushion, breathing slowly as she tried to calm her racing thoughts. She noticed Keanu watching her with a depth in his eyes that made her feel safer, even in the middle of chaos. Keanu, she murmured, why are you always here when everything falls apart? He gave a soft, thoughtful smile. Because you're someone who matters to me. Her heart warmed with something she wasn't ready to name, not yet, not today, but she felt it, and she knew he felt it too. They sat quietly for a while, letting the moment settle. Eventually, Sandra straightened, wiping her face and gathering herself. Okay, she whispered, I need to think. I need to understand what's happening before I call her. Keanu nodded gently. Take your time. She took one more deep breath. Can you help me go through the message? Maybe there's something we're missing. Keanu picked up her phone again, reading the strange message slowly. You don't know the whole story, and you're not safe until you do. He frowned slightly. The phrasing is strange, it's not threatening, it's warning you. Warning me about what? She asked. Something connected to your mom, he said carefully, and something your sister has been hiding. She felt a small chill. Do you think this person knows my sister? Maybe, or maybe they know what your sister found. He paused. Or maybe they were involved in whatever she's afraid to tell you. Sandra rubbed her forehead, overwhelmed. But how would a stranger have my number? How would they know anything about my family? Keanu looked at her gently. Fame can open doors for the wrong people, but this sounds more personal than that. She felt her stomach twist. I don't want this to be something dark. I know, he said softly, but sometimes the past holds things we never expected. Sandra looked at the phone again. Every instinct in her body told her this message was not random. The timing wasn't random. The tone wasn't random. It meant something. And whoever sent it knew something they weren't supposed to. Sandra felt a sudden weight in her chest, a memory rising slowly from a part of her mind she hadn't visited in years. She whispered it before she even understood why. My mom had secrets. Keanu looked at her with gentle curiosity. What do you mean? She stared at the floor, her voice distant. She was kind, gentle, but she had this shadow around her sometimes, like she was afraid of something or someone. When we were younger, she used to say things like, some things are better left alone. I never understood it. I thought it was just stress or sadness. But now I don't know. Keanu listened quietly, letting her speak without interruption. Sandra continued, her voice trembling slightly. There were letters she kept hidden in her drawer. I found them once when I was a teenager. She said they were from an old friend, but she never let us read them. She never talked about them. She paused, swallowing. And she used to get calls late at night. She would talk quietly, then hang up fast if anyone came near. Keanu's expression shifted. Did you ever ask her who she was talking to? Once, Sandra whispered. She said, someone from before, someone I hoped I would never hear from again. Keanu's eyes narrowed slightly, not with suspicion but with careful thought. And you think this might be connected? She nodded slowly, fear tightening inside her. I don't know, but something about that message, something about the timing, it feels like those shadows are coming back. He reached out and placed his hand gently on the table again, closer to hers this time. Sandra, whatever your mom kept hidden, whatever your sister found, we'll face it together. You're not going to deal with this alone. She nodded weakly, grateful beyond words. Thank you. They sat for another long moment before Sandra finally reached for her phone again. She stared at her sister's name, her thumb hovering over the call button, but she couldn't press it. Not yet. Instead, she whispered, can we step outside for a moment? I need air. Keanu stood instantly. Of course. They walked to the backyard, the winter air cool against their skin. The light was soft, the sky a pale shade of gold as the afternoon moved toward evening. Sandra wrapped her arms around herself, breathing deeply. Keanu stood beside her, hands in his pockets, keeping close enough to ground her but far enough to let her breathe freely. After a long silence, she whispered, Keanu, if I tell you something personal, will you promise not to think differently of me? He turned to her gently. I could never think differently of you. She looked at him with raw vulnerability. I always felt like my family's story wasn't complete, like there were pieces missing, like something wasn't right. And today, I feel like all of those instincts were real. Keanu nodded quietly. And that's okay. Sometimes we feel the truth before we understand it. She took a shaky breath. I'm scared that when I call her, everything will change. Keanu stepped closer, his voice warm and steady. Then hold on to me while it does. She felt tears rise again, soft and slow. She didn't know how to thank him for being there, for choosing to stay, for protecting her heart even when he was carrying his own. She wiped her cheeks, breathing deeply. Keanu, why did you really come today with the gift, with the note, with everything? He hesitated for a long moment, the winter air still and quiet around them. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because I felt like this Christmas, you needed me. Her heart ached at the sincerity in his words. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed again. She looked down. A new message. This time, from her sister. But the message wasn't what she expected. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an explanation. It wasn't fear. It was only 3 words. He found me. Sandra's breath froze. Keanu stepped closer instantly. Sandra, who is he? Her lips trembled. She whispered, barely able to speak. I think it's the same person my mom was afraid of. Sandra stood frozen in the cold evening air, staring at the message glowing on her screen. The world around her seemed to stop. The soft sway of the trees, the distant hum of cars on the street, even the winter breeze brushing against her skin. Nothing moved, nothing breathed, nothing existed except those three words burning into her mind. He found me. Her sister had sent those words with no context, no explanation, no time to think. The message felt like a cry for help, a warning, and a confession all at once. Her hands trembled so violently she almost dropped the phone. She pressed it tighter against her palm as if it were the only thing keeping her connected to reality. Keanu noticed her breathing shift instantly. He stepped closer, placing a steady hand near her elbow, not touching her yet, but grounding her with his presence. "Sandra," he said softly, "you're shaking. Talk to me. Tell me what this means." Sandra licked her lips, but her mouth felt dry, her voice caught in her chest. Finally, she forced herself to speak, her words fragile and uneven. "Keanu, she's talking about the man my mother used to fear, the man she always tried to hide from." Keanu's expression darkened with concern. "The one she got late phone calls from." She nodded slowly. "Yes, him." "Did she ever tell you who he was?" Sandra shook her head. "No, she never told us his name. She only said he was someone from her past, someone she hoped would never find her again." Keanu took a slow breath, eyes steady. "And now your sister is saying he found her." Sandra closed her eyes, tears building. "Yes." The weight of that single yes pressed down on both of them. Keanu ran a slow hand through his hair, thinking deeply, trying to piece things together without scaring her further. "Sandra," he said carefully, "your sister wouldn't send something like this unless she was truly afraid." She whispered, "I know." "Did she send anything else?" he asked gently. Sandra looked down at her phone again, scrolling. There were no new messages, just those three words. She felt sick with fear, her stomach twisting angrily. "I have to call her," she whispered. "I can't wait anymore." Keanu nodded. "I'll be right here." But as she pressed her trembling finger toward the call button, the phone suddenly buzzed again. Another message from her sister appeared. This one was longer. "I don't know how he found me. I thought this was over. I thought he didn't know where I was. I'm scared, Sandra. I don't know what to do. Please call me. Please hurry." Sandra felt panic crawl through her body, tightening her chest. She tried to breathe, but her breaths came in shallow pulls. Keanu stepped closer, his voice low and firm. "Sandra, look at me." She lifted her teary eyes to his. "You're not alone," he said. "You're not doing this alone. Call her. I'm here." His presence steadied her enough to hit the call button. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Sandra pressed her hand to her forehead, her breath shaking. "Pick up, please pick up," she whispered. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the line clicked. A trembling voice answered. "Sandra." Her sister sounded frightened, breathless, almost broken. Sandra stepped closer to Keanu unconsciously, needing the support of his nearness. "I'm here," she whispered into the phone. "I'm here, talk to me, what's going on?" There was a shaky breath on the other end. "He called me today." Sandra froze, her heart pounding wildly. "Who?" "Him," her sister whispered. "The man Mom was scared of." Keanu exhaled slowly beside her, listening closely. Her sister continued, voice trembling. "I was at work, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, he said my name. My real name, Sandra, not the nickname I use now. He knew where I lived. He knew I moved states. He knew I wasn't with you anymore. And then he said something that terrified me." Sandra swallowed hard, gripping the phone. "What did he say?" There was a long, shaky pause. "He said, you can't hide from the past. Neither of you can. She needs to know the truth, all of it." Sandra felt her knees weaken. Keanu instinctively reached out, placing a steadying hand on her arm. She leaned into him without thinking, needing the strength he offered. She whispered into the phone, "Did he threaten you?" "No," her sister said softly. "Not directly. But his voice, Sandra, his voice is exactly the way I remember it from when we were kids. Calm, quiet, but dangerous." Sandra felt a cold wave wash through her. "How did he find you?" "I don't know," her sister cried softly. "But he told me he's been waiting, that he promised our mom he would stay away unless something happened." Keanu's eyes sharpened slightly. "Unless what happened?" he whispered. Sandra asked the same question aloud. Unless what happened, what did he mean? There was another soft, frightened breath over the phone. I think he meant Mom's death. Sandra's eyes filled again. But she died of illness. Why would that matter? Her sister's voice dropped lower. Sand, she didn't just die, she left something behind, something she wanted us to find, something scary. Sandra felt her heart race. What are you talking about? Her sister took a long breath before speaking again. I found Mom's old storage box last night. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside, there were letters, not from a friend, from him. Sandra pressed a hand to her chest, feeling physically sick. Her sister continued, voice trembling. There were notes, warnings, old photographs, and a document with our mom's writing on it, but I didn't understand all of it. It talks about someone watching her, following her, someone she ran away from when she was young. Sandra's breathing grew tight. Why didn't she tell us? Because she was trying to protect us, her sister whispered. She didn't want us to live with fear. She never wanted us involved. Sandra leaned heavily into Keanu, her body trembling. He slipped an arm around her instinctively, grounding her gently. What else did you find? Sandra whispered. Her sister hesitated. Something about you. Sandra froze. What? I don't want to scare you, Sand, her sister said softly. But Mom kept notes about your career, your public life. Letters about how worried she was that the more famous you became, the harder it would be to keep you safe. Sandra felt a deep ache in her chest. Safe from who? Her sister whispered, from him. Keanu's jaw tightened slightly. He held Sandra closer, protective. Do you know who he is? Sandra asked. No, her sister whispered. Mom never wrote his name, just initials, just warnings, but the letters say he hurt her once, emotionally, maybe more. She never said exactly how. She only wrote that he was someone she once trusted, someone she regretted letting into her life. Sandra felt her legs weaken again. Why contact you now? Her sister's voice cracked. Because Mom left a message behind, not for me, for you. Sandra pressed the phone harder to her ear. For me. Yes, her sister whispered. She wrote something sealed in an envelope with your name on it. Sandra felt her breath falter. What does it say? Her sister hesitated again, fear thick in her voice. I didn't open it. It's yours. She wrote that only you should read it. Sandra felt a tear slip down her cheek. Where is it? I have it here, her sister whispered. I can send you a picture, or I can come to you. Sandra closed her eyes tightly, overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. Her sister took a shaky breath. Whatever Mom was protecting us from, it didn't end when she died. And that man, he knows something we don't. He said you need to know the truth. Her voice broke. I don't want you to be in danger. Before Sandra could respond, the phone beeped. Another incoming call. Her sister gasped. Sand, he's calling me again. Don't answer, Sandra cried. Her sister's voice trembled. I'm scared. Don't answer, Sandra repeated, please. Her sister didn't answer the call. But moments later, a new message came to Sandra's phone. From another unknown number. She tapped it with shaky hands. The message contained only a photo. A photo of the envelope with her name on it. And written across it in dark pen were the words, You cannot hide the truth forever. Sandra's blood ran cold. Keanu pulled the phone from her trembling hands. His eyes widened slightly as he processed what he saw. He whispered, This person isn't just watching your sister. They're watching both of you. Sandra broke into tears, her body trembling in fear. Keanu, what do I do? What does he want? Why now, after all these years? Keanu pulled her into his arms without hesitation, holding her tightly, his voice low and steady against her hair. We'll figure this out. I won't let anything happen to you. She gripped him desperately, feeling her world spin out of control. But before she could speak, a sharp sound came from inside the house. A thud. Soft, but unmistakable. Sandra pulled away slightly, her eyes wide. Keanu, did you hear that? He nodded slowly. His entire body shifted. Calm. Alert. Protective. Stay behind me, he whispered. Sandra's breath shook. Someone's inside. Keanu didn't answer. He didn't need to. He stepped forward slowly. One quiet step at a time. toward the sound coming from her living room. And Sandra stood behind him, her heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear anything else. The truth she was never meant to face. The thud inside the house was faint, but in the heavy silence surrounding them, it echoed like a warning neither of them could ignore. Sandra felt her breath catch painfully in her throat as Keanu stepped forward, every movement slow, careful, controlled. The soft winter wind brushed against her back as if urging her to stay close, to stay grounded, to stay safe. She followed Keanu inside, her heart pounding so violently she could hear it in her ears, each beat sharp and uneven. The living room was dim, illuminated only by the warm lights of the Christmas tree. The glow reflected gently off the ornaments, casting soft shadows across the walls, shadows that suddenly seemed much taller, much darker than before. Sandra swallowed hard and stayed behind Keanu, her trembling hands gripping the edge of her sweater as if holding onto something solid could anchor her fear. Keanu raised his hand slightly, a silent signal for her to stay back, and moved deeper into the living room with quiet steps. Sandra watched him carefully, her breath shallow, her fingers cold. The room looked the same as it had earlier. Nothing seemed out of place. No broken glass, no movement, no sound. But the silence was different now. Thick, charged, heavy with the possibility of someone hiding just out of sight. Keanu scanned the room slowly, his posture calm but alert, his eyes sharp. After a moment, he whispered softly without turning around, "Stay close, but don't move ahead of me." She nodded even though he couldn't see her. "Okay," she whispered back, her voice barely audible. They moved together toward the hallway, the quiet footsteps on the hardwood floor echoing in the stillness. Sandra felt her skin prickling with tension, her stomach twisting painfully. She kept thinking about the messages, the unknown numbers, the envelope, the man from her mother's past, the fear in her sister's voice. Everything felt connected in a way she didn't understand, but she could sense danger lingering somewhere just beyond her reach. When they reached the hallway, Keanu paused again, listening carefully. Sandra held her breath, waiting, terrified of the silence and equally terrified of what might break it. After a long moment, Keanu spoke softly, "There's no one here." Sandra blinked, confused and trembling, but the sound. Keanu looked around again, scanning every corner, his eyes narrowing. It could be something that fell, a decoration, or something from the shelf. But Sandra wasn't convinced. She stepped closer, her voice shaky. "Keanu, what if it wasn't an accident? What if someone wanted us to think they were here?" Keanu turned to her gently. "We'll check everything, just breathe." They walked through the house together, room by room. The kitchen was spotless, her bedroom untouched, the guest room empty. Every room felt still and strangely quiet, like the house itself was holding its breath. By the time they reached the last room, a small study at the end of the hall, Sandra's nerves felt stretched thin. Keanu opened the door slowly. Nothing. Just her desk, her books, the soft hum of the heater, and the faint smell of old paper. But then Sandra noticed something. The window. It was opened by a small crack. Barely an inch. But she had not opened it earlier. Her breath stuttered. "Keanu, look." Keanu followed her gaze and stepped toward the window. He touched the edge gently, examining it with careful eyes. The latch was loose. He looked at her, his expression serious. "Did you open this today?" Sandra shook her head slowly, fear rising in her chest. "No, I haven't opened this window in weeks." Keanu's jaw tightened, just a small shift, but enough for her to see the tension in him. He whispered, "Okay, we're going to stay calm. Someone could have tried to open it earlier. It might not mean they were inside." Sandra took a shaky breath, "Or it might mean they were." Keanu didn't answer immediately. Instead, he gently closed the window, locked it, and pulled the curtains shut. Then he turned toward her, his expression soft but firm. "We're not going to jump to conclusions, but we are going to be careful." Sandra nodded weakly, her fear still twisting inside her, a tight knot she couldn't unravel. They walked back to the living room together. The Christmas lights flickered softly, reflecting off the small silver bracelet on her wrist. She stared at it for a moment, touched by the weight of everything today had brought, from Keanu's confession to the mysterious messages to the shadows from her mother's past rising unexpectedly. She sank onto the couch, feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, and terrified all at once. Keanu sat beside her, not too close, but close enough for her to feel his warmth, his presence, the quiet reassurance of someone who refused to leave her side. After a long silence, she whispered, Keanu, what do you think is happening? He looked at her carefully. I think your sister found something your mom wanted hidden for years, and whoever this man is, he knows that truth is close to coming out. She swallowed hard. But why warn me? Why involve us now? Keanu leaned back slightly, his eyes thoughtful. Maybe because he knows your mom trusted you the most. Maybe because the truth she left behind is something only you can understand. Or maybe he thinks he can scare you away from finding it. Sandra felt a cold ache in her chest. Then he doesn't know me very well. Keanu smiled softly. No, he doesn't. She took a slow breath, gathering her strength. Keanu, I need to see that envelope. I need to know what she wrote. Keanu nodded gently. Then we'll get it. She looked at him with vulnerable eyes. Will you come with me? To my sister. I don't want to go alone. Keanu didn't hesitate. I'll go anywhere you need me to. Her heart tightened at the sincerity of his words. She reached for her phone with trembling hands, ready to tell her sister she was coming, ready to take the first step toward understanding a truth her mother had hidden for decades. But before she typed a single word, another message came through from her sister. This time it was a photo of her mother's handwriting. The envelope, the same one from earlier. But now Sandra could read the words clearly. In her mother's familiar script, it said, For Sandra, when the past finds you, read this, and forgive me. Sandra stared at the screen, her heart breaking, her vision blurring. Her mother had known this moment would come. She had feared it, prepared for it, left something behind only Sandra was meant to read. She lowered the phone slowly, tears falling silently. Keanu, she whispered, I think she was hiding something to protect us. Keanu placed a gentle hand near hers, his voice soft. Whatever it is, you're strong enough to face it. She nodded shakily. I hope so. They sat together in the warm glow of the Christmas lights, the silence heavy but full, the weight of truth resting quietly between them. Sandra felt Keanu's presence beside her, solid and warm, a reminder that she wasn't stepping into this alone. His confession, the bracelet, the note from years ago, everything he carried inside him, it all intertwined with this moment, this fear, this search for answers. And somehow she felt safer knowing he was here. After a few more breaths, she stood slowly. We need to go to her now. Keanu nodded and stood with her. Okay, get your coat, I'll drive. But just as they reached the front door, Sandra's phone buzzed again. She froze, fear returning instantly. Keanu looked at her gently. Who is it? Sandra swallowed and checked the screen. Another unknown number. Another message. But this one was different. There were no threats. No warnings. No photos. Just a single line. Your mother loved you more than her fear. Trust what she left behind. Sandra felt tears slip down her cheeks again, not from fear this time, but from something deeper, a tenderness she wasn't expecting. She whispered, Keanu, I don't think he's trying to hurt us. Keanu looked at the message again and then back at her. Then, what is he trying to do? Sandra breathed slowly, the truth settling inside her. I think he's trying to make sure I understand the truth my mom couldn't tell me. Keanu placed a warm hand on her shoulder. And whatever that truth is, you won't face it alone. Sandra looked at him with glistening eyes, emotion tightening her throat. Keanu, thank you for everything. He smiled softly, his voice warm and sincere. I kept that bracelet for years because it reminded me of who you are, strong, kind, brave, and ready to face the world even when it scares you. I'll stand with you through anything. She stepped closer, her heart heavy and full. I'm really glad you came today. Keanu's eyes softened. Me too. They left the house together, stepping into the cool winter night. Sandra looked up at the sky, the faint glow of stars shimmering above her. She felt the fear still lingering inside her, the questions still unanswered, the truth still waiting to be revealed. But she didn't feel alone. She didn't feel unprotected. She didn't feel powerless. She felt ready, because Keanu was beside her. As they drove toward her sister's home, the bracelet glimmered softly on her wrist, warm, familiar, filled with meaning. The note he once wrote for her, now decades old, rested safely in her pocket. And somewhere deep inside her, she knew this Christmas would not break her. It would heal her. It would reveal the truth. And it would bind her, and Keanu in a way neither of them had ever dared to imagine